Everybody has to start getting a little more excited for America's birthday. Come on, our big 250 is coming up. It's on July 4th for the kids in our public school. And I think that's a pretty big deal. Problem is, there's kind of a stink on it because you know who is president right now, so the left half of the country fears he'll make the anniversary about him. Of course he will. I even bet that on Kalshi. The question is whether we all will help him do it. We shouldn't. This is about America. He isn't America. He's the temporary caretaker of America. And yet there is a recurrent theme on the far left that things have never been worse. Kevin Hart expressed a view many hold when he told the New York Times, "You're witnessing white power and white privilege at an all-time high." This is one of the big problems with wokeness, that what you say doesn't have to make sense or jibe with the facts or ever be challenged.
Bill Maher just did the one thing a lot of mainstream liberal voices have seemed reluctant to do for years. He turned the lens on the modern American left, including his own side, and broke it down right in front of everyone. He did not hold back, and he did not soften the points he was making. The whole moment came across as sharp, direct, and unusually unsparing. Let's get back into it.
I'm going to tell you, I know it sounds kind of out of left field, but actually Uncle Joe is pointing liberals towards something they need to be more aware of. They have a bad case of progressivophobia. That's the phrase coined by Steven Pinker to describe a brain disorder that strikes liberals and makes them incapable of recognizing progress. It's like situational blindness, only what you can't see is that your dorm in 2021 is better than the South before the Civil War. If you think America is more racist now than ever, more than before women could vote, and more homophobic than when blowjobs were a felony, you have progressivophobia and should adjust your mask because it's covering your eyes.
Yeah, progressivophobia, this so-called brain disorder that, as Maher put it, keeps people from recognizing progress even when it is right in front of them. That was basically his read on his own side. Critics say the mindset shows up when people live in what many describe as one of the freest, richest, and most inclusive countries in modern history, yet still talk as if it is the worst place on earth. Some commentators argue this is no longer real political debate, but a kind of willful blindness dressed up as moral courage.
And yet there is a recurrent theme on the far left that things have never been worse. Kevin Hart expressed a view many hold when he told the New York Times, "You're witnessing white power and white privilege at an all-time high." This is one of the big problems with wokeness, that what you say doesn't have to make sense or jibe with the facts or ever be challenged, lest the challenge itself be conflated with racism. But saying white power and privilege is at an all-time high is just ridiculous. Higher than a century ago, the year of the Tulsa Race Massacre? Higher than the years when the KKK rode unchecked and Jim Crow went unchallenged? Higher than the 1960s when the Supremes and Willie Mays still couldn't stay in the same hotel as the white people they were working with? Higher than during slavery?
An all-time high, really, at least in the way Maher was framing it. He was pointing to a mindset that can lead some people to describe the present as worse than some of the darkest periods in American history. Commentators online compared that kind of thinking to acting as if the country is in its worst era ever, even when they are living comfortably, surrounded by wealth, deals, and elite access. That is the kind of distortion critics say this so-called progressivophobia can create, where history gets flattened and the most troubling chapters are treated like they are happening right now. And that is why this landed so hard online. For a lot of viewers, it was not just another political rant. It felt like a rare moment of someone from inside the same broad camp saying the quiet part out loud. That kind of critique tends to hit differently, because it forces people to face the gap between public messaging and how things are actually being framed in everyday conversation. Some supporters saw it as overdue honesty, while critics argued it only raised questions about how divided the left has become over tone, priorities, and the way progress itself gets defined. Either way, the reaction showed that this was not being brushed off as a casual comment. People were treating it like a bigger sign of where the conversation is headed, and that is exactly why the debate kept building.
If you run for office in America, you have to want to live here. I bring this up because there was a video that made the rounds recently by a woman who said she was a proud progressive and was running for state representative in New Hampshire, and yet posted this.
Is there a place we can move that people would be happy to have us, that we're not gentrifying or colonizing? I don't want to be a problem, but I need to get the out of this country.
Out of this country. The one you want to be elected to a leadership position in? What was your campaign slogan? America, a shining shithole on a hill? Look at it. Even prostitutes have to pretend they like what they do.
A progressive candidate for real office, openly saying she needs to get out of the country she wants to represent. And that is the part many viewers found hardest to ignore. This does not come across as some isolated slip either. Critics argue it reflects the kind of personality the modern progressive movement keeps producing at scale. People who seem to dislike the place, people who act trapped by it, people who treat public service like a burden instead of a responsibility. Online commentators say the gap between what they preach and how they live is impossible to miss. If someone truly had the freedom they claim to want, they would not be rushing off to Cuba or Venezuela. Instead, they stay right here, on camera, complaining, and then Maher shifts his focus to the rich and famous.
Last August, he was remarking on the great sacrifice he's made by offering himself up as our president again by saying, "Again, I'm confused by this political message. Vote for me because I hate it here." Now, does America have big problems? Yes, I've often cited the America Sucks list. Things like being 54th in the world in infant mortality behind Cuba, 19th in literacy behind Russia, 72nd in female representation in government behind Iraq. A lot of work to do here. And is it possible for a country to lose itself so much that leaving it is justified? Yeah.
And that, some viewers argued, sums up a big part of the modern political class in one sentence. The vibe is basically, I could have been relaxing somewhere better, whether that means a private club in Florida or a villa in the south of France. Critics say both sides keep running for office, like America is some kind of burden they are bravely carrying. That is the I hate it here energy people keep pointing to, and online commentators say it is seeped into both parties. The numbers Maher mentioned also landed hard. 54th in infant mortality, 19th in literacy, 72nd in female representation. Critics argue a serious country should not keep producing leaders who campaign as if they would rather be anywhere else.
But we're not there yet, not by a long shot, and we don't need quitters. We need people who will stay and fix it. Maybe the problem isn't that America isn't worth defending. Maybe the problem is that lots of people today are entitled whiners who have no perspective and no idea how good they have it. 59% of self-identified liberals say there have been times when they considered leaving America for good, like after NBC canceled The West Wing. I don't get it. You want so badly for every immigrant to come to this country and experience the good life, but somehow it's so terrible you want to leave? And I see conservatives in Texas are talking secession again.
59%. Read that number again. According to the figures Maher was pointing to, 59% of self-identified liberals have, at some point, reportedly thought about leaving America for good. To Maher, that statistic seemed to settle the argument, and Gallup's numbers appeared to support the broader point. In 2025, just 36% of Democrats said they were extremely or very proud to be American, which was down 26 points in a single year. Republicans came in at 92%. That put the patriotism gap at more than 50 points, the widest spread the survey had ever recorded. That is why the conversation did not just fade out after the clip ended. It kept spreading because it touched a nerve. People had been circling for a while. The idea that public figures can sound deeply disconnected from the country they are speaking for. Once that feeling gets into the conversation, every new reaction starts to matter more, because viewers begin reading the moment as part of a much larger split. And that split is what made Maher's comments feel so unavoidable online. Supporters of his take saw it as a blunt reality check, while critics said it was another example of frustration being dressed up as insight. Either way, the response showed that people were not treating this as a harmless hot take. They were treating it like a window into where the broader political mood is headed, especially when pride, identity, and public trust are all being questioned at once. So the clip kept bouncing around for a reason. It was less about one joke or one line, and more about what people thought it revealed underneath the surface.
Then there's all the TikToks telling Americans things like,
fucked. I think the new American dream is to leave.
I'm 18 years old and I escaped America.
yeah. Yeah, you don't have to escape America. That wall we're always debating isn't to keep you in. The New Republic just ran a story about the vulnerable minorities who want to flee America, including the author, a man trapped in the dystopian homophobic hellscape that is New York City. I wonder if he knows that there are 66 countries where just being is a crime. Cute story in the news last month. Burundi's president called on his citizens to stone people, and not in the good way. Wow, suddenly the don't say gay law doesn't sound all that bad. And Uganda? Oh, they don't just give you a ticket for parking in the rear. You can get the death penalty for it.
"I escaped America," one 18-year-old allegedly said, using a phone made in a free country and posting it on an app operated by a foreign company. To critics, that was one of the clearest examples of how disconnected the whole thing can feel. There are dozens of countries around the world where the same lifestyle these TikTok users casually enjoy could bring serious consequences, or worse. Some critics argue the modern American left has little sense of what a real crisis actually looks like. In their view, they often treat being challenged online like the same thing as facing real-world persecution. And that comparison does not sit right with a lot of viewers.
In China, they have the death penalty for almost 50 crimes. And in 13 countries, atheism is punishable by death, and 61 impose restrictions on women's clothing, so bring a scarf. According to Amnesty International, paramilitary groups, the government's critics in Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, and arbitrary detentions are widespread in Cuba, Ecuador, El Salvador, Nicaragua. If you're wondering how that's just like no cash bail, it's not. In Russia, just referring to the war in Ukraine as a war can get you 15 years in the fabulous prisons made famous by some of the world's most famous novels. You think America's evil because we didn't nominate Margot Robbie for an Oscar? Just wait till you get thrown out the window of your very own dream house.
15 years behind bars for using the wrong word about a war in another country. Entire nations where women reportedly cannot even choose what to wear. That is the reality, critics say, outside the American bubble. And Maher's joke about being thrown out of a window over a beach house lands because the audience already knows the kind of story he is pointing at. Critics argue that people around the world can lose their freedom, or even their lives, for the same liberties Americans complain about on brunch podcasts, and that perspective gap is exactly what some viewers say has made modern liberal media look out of touch. Some even call it a laughingstock, and that reaction is part of why the clip keeps sticking.
Oh no, the Constitution isn't perfect because it wasn't written by Taylor Swift, but... And yes, the founders made excruciating compromises, obviously slavery. But slavery was a deal breaker for the southern states. So there would have been two countries. And then to end slavery in North America, it would have involved invading a sovereign nation instead of having the moral high ground of keeping a union together. Would that have been better? History's complicated, and Gen Z reasoning is not.
Deals were made, compromises were made, and some difficult realities were tolerated, because ending them on the spot could have led to something even worse. In Maher's view, That kind of nuance has been pushed aside and replaced with slogans. From that perspective, the past gets flattened into one simple message. Everyone was seen as evil, everyone was framed as oppressive, and everyone somehow looked worse than today's college freshman with a bumper sticker. To Maher, that is not real analysis. It is arrogance dressed up as morality. And that is where the tension really starts to build, because once a clip like this lands in the broader conversation, people are no longer just reacting to the joke itself. They are reacting to what they think it says about the entire cultural mood around it. Some viewers see a needed pushback against shallow talking points, while others think it came off like an overcorrection that suggests the divide is only getting wider. What keeps this moment alive online is the way it sits right at the intersection of politics, identity, and public frustration. It is not just another passing headline, it has become one of those clips people use to argue their bigger point about where the country is headed. And when that happens, every new repost, every reaction, and every side-by-side comparison makes the discussion feel even larger than the original moment. That is why the conversation keeps circling back to the same issue, whether public commentary still has room for nuance, or whether everything now gets squeezed into loud slogans and quick outrage. Supporters of Maher's view say that is exactly what he was calling out, while critics say the framing itself can miss the bigger picture. Either way, the online response shows that people are not treating this like a throwaway remark. They are treating it like a sign of a much deeper split.
They think they're pure, but they're really just simplistic. They know two things. White people did some very bad things, and no, that's it. That's all they do. That's it. Well, I know that too, but I also know other things. Like how in 1776, slavery was a lot like flying private today. If you could afford to, you would have done it too. Everybody did it, of all races, throughout history, in the Bible, and all over the world. If you hate George Washington for slavery, are you prepared to hate the woman king? Because her empire was built on it too. And where do you imagine is this place, outside of your brilliant, pure minds, that's so much better than America?
They present themselves as morally pure, but critics argue the bigger issue is that the mindset is often overly simple. Some viewers say that might be one of the sharpest ways to describe a modern progressive outlook when it gets put on television. According to that criticism, they pick up a couple of history facts, stop there, and fill in the rest with attitude. And here is the part that many people online find embarrassing. Some critics point out that slavery existed in Africa, Asia, the Middle East, and across civilizations around the world. In that view, it was a global reality, not something limited to one country. So when blame gets aimed at only one place for something much wider in history, critics say that is not careful analysis, it is just ignorance dressed up as moral courage.
At least America self-corrects, a mechanism for which was actually written into the Constitution. The citizens of Gaza cannot assemble in protest of their own government, cannot do or say what they want, or practice whatever religion they want, or have a free press. All rights guaranteed in just our First Amendment. The irony is that all this is that the world the founders birthed, flawed though it may be, provides the bedrock for everything that makes life good for the very people who hate them so much. It's so easy to take for granted individual liberty, a Bill of Rights, the rule of law, checks and balances, getting a trial by jury, the peaceful transfer of power, protecting minority rights, and democracy itself.
There it is, the comparison that some critics say the modern left is reluctant to make. The rights many Americans take for granted, free press, free speech, free assembly, and freedom of religion, simply do not exist in much of the world. In places like North Korea, that kind of freedom is not available at all, according to public commentary. And online discussion suggests that some of the country's certain progressive voices praise on social media could punish someone for posting the same kind of content they share from the comfort of their own couch.
But those are the things that make our pampered, privileged, bratty lives so relatively cushy. No one starves here. Even our poor people are fat. Not everyone has to be bribed. Anyone can get rich. The cops are flawed, but we're not a police state. The drinks don't make you go blind, and no one pushes you out of a window for a bad Yelp review. Our government takes a lot, but it also gives a lot. Healthcare, retirement, money, unemployment, disability, college grants, food stamps. Maybe in the blissfully perspective-free mind, this all adds up to a low bar that America has reached. But you have to ask, why do millions of people every year risk their lives to come here? Because they want what we got. The founders were flawed, but they did build a place the whole world wants to break into. No one is paying a coyote to smuggle them into India or Russia. Immigrants don't see us as the problem. They see us as the solution.
Nobody, absolutely nobody, is paying smugglers to sneak into Russia, India, China, or Iran. Instead, people are coming here in huge numbers every year. By fiscal 2024, more than 34.7 million people had pending green card applications, which some commentators said was among the highest figures in American history. That one statistic, critics argued, cuts right into the heart of the debate. If America were really the kind of place the modern left keeps describing, they said the rest of the world would not be lining up to get in. In that view, it is not a nightmare people are trying to escape, it is the destination. And that is exactly why people keep arguing over this clip, because it is not just about one hot take or one sharp joke. Whoever sits in office is only borrowing the job for a while, not taking ownership of the country. Online, it has turned into a larger argument about whether honesty in public debate is being replaced by carefully packaged talking points, and whether that shift leaves any room for real pushback. Some viewers see Maher's comments as a rare moment of someone from inside the system saying what others avoid saying out loud. Others think the reaction around it led some viewers to believe the opposite, that once a clip hits social media, people stop listening for the point and start looking for a side to defend. That split is what keeps the conversation moving, because every repost brings the same tension back into focus. What makes it even stickier is the way people are using it as a stand-in for a much bigger cultural fight. Supporters say it raised questions about how easily public debate can get flattened into slogans, while critics argue that kind of framing can leave out important context. So the clip keeps living on, not because everyone agrees with it, but because no one can agree on what it really says about the moment we are in.
Everybody has to start getting a little more excited for America's birthday. Come on, our big 250 is coming up. It's on July 4th for the kids in our public school. And I think that's a pretty big deal. Problem is, there's kind of a stink on it because you know who is president right now, so the left half of the country fears he'll make the anniversary about him. Of course he will. I even bet that on Kalshi. The question is whether we all will help him do it. We shouldn't. This is about America. He isn't America. He's the temporary caretaker of America, America's employee. And the message should be that America isn't actually his, and that no one side gets to own being psyched about the country.
That, according to this line of criticism, is the mindset some commentators say the modern left has drifted away from. Presidents change, parties change, but America is still here. Whoever sits in office is only borrowing the job for a while, not taking ownership of the country. From Maher's point of view, some people on the modern left may have blurred the line between disliking a politician and rejecting the nation itself. Critics argue that this kind of thinking has come at a steep cost, from losing voters to falling behind in elections and struggling to stay culturally relevant. Their view is that real patriotism does not mean automatic agreement, it means caring enough to take responsibility for the country.
So this 4th of July, let's celebrate the genius American idea of checks and balances, which yes, is threatened and yes, is taking on water, but is still afloat. Like those tall ships I remember from 1976. Oh, yes, I remember. I was 20, and I wore a bicentennial t-shirt that whole summer. Yeah, man. I wore it every day, and nobody thought it meant that I loved Nixon. Because 50 years ago, liberals didn't concede patriotism. Abbie Hoffman was the quintessential 60s radical, and when he had to appear before the House Un-American Activities Committee, he wore an American flag shirt.
This is the history lesson some voices on the new left may desperately need. There was a time when the most radical figures in American politics still wrapped themselves in the flag. They did not run away from it, they claimed it for themselves. Abbie Hoffman, the well-known protester from the 1960s, was even described as wearing an American flag shirt to Congress. In Maher's view, that is where the modern left may have made its biggest political misstep, by handing the flag, the anthem, and even the country itself over to the other party.
Every election year, Democrats seem to remember patriotism for about an hour at their convention when they're trying to win back swing voters. The whole message of Kamala's speech in 2024 was take back the flag. That's why she talked about America like a pageant contestant.
The greatest privilege on earth. The privilege and pride of being an American.
Hard to believe she lost, huh? Well, you can't take back the flag in an hour if the rest of the time you treat patriotism as something vaguely embarrassing. It shouldn't be, even though we are far from perfect.
Hard to believe she lost, right? That is the basic argument being made here. You cannot put on a display of patriotism for 1 hour every 4 years and expect the country to just buy it. Critics say the modern left often treats American pride like an old sweater, pulled out for one convention speech and then shoved back in the closet once the election is over. In online commentary, voters are said to notice the eye rolls, the lectures, and the public mockery. From that perspective, no last-minute flag pin can erase years of perceived contempt. And that is why the reaction keeps stretching far beyond one clip. Once people start seeing it as a bigger argument about identity, loyalty, and who gets to define patriotism, the whole discussion changes shape fast. What began as commentary on a political moment turns into a debate over tone, trust, and whether public figures on either side are still speaking to regular voters or just to their own base. According to online discussion, that is the part many viewers cannot stop talking about. They are not only reacting to the message itself, but to the way it landed, because the delivery made some people feel heard while making others feel singled out. That split matters, since it shows how quickly a single segment can become a mirror for a much larger frustration. So the clip keeps getting pulled back into the conversation, not because anyone has settled the argument, but because it taps into a question people are still wrestling with. Is public criticism helping the country think more clearly, or has it become another form of performance that leaves everyone more divided than before?
Let's all give it up for soccer being the greatest sport. No. No. Not the game itself. That sucks. I mean, there's more scoring at a Star Trek convention. But I am loving that the World Cup has brought to our shores all these people who are doing Americans the service of reminding us, just when we needed it on our big 250 birthday, that actually this place is kind of awesome. And yes, I know, how dare I, how privileged when there are so many problems and threats and people left behind. All true. I could give you the statistics where we are not good enough and have done so many times. Infant mortality rate, 54th in the world. Women in government, 85th. Overdose deaths, lack of health insurance. Yes, many problems. But that's because the name of our country is America, not utopia.
That, critics say, is the frame the modern left has struggled to use. America was never meant to be a utopia. It was supposed to be flaws and all. And when people compare it to real countries on this planet, not the perfect ones, invented in online arguments, The contrast can be pretty striking.
And the appropriate comparison isn't to the Eden you might imagine, it's to every other place on Earth. We can't be more perfect than what's in your mind. We can only be more perfect than Belgium. Which I bet has nicer airports, but trust me, has its own problems. And I never saw anyone getting ecstatic about being there, but that's exactly what I've been seeing here for the last month. Social media flooded with videos of slack-jawed soccer tourists wandering around America, positively gushing about everything we take for granted, reminding us what America looks like from the outside. Not through the lens of some influencer explaining why watering your lawn is violence. Just regular people looking around and saying, wow, these people live like rock stars.
This may have been the funniest line in the whole monologue. Foreign tourists come to America, and, in his telling, they cannot make sense of what they were allegedly told about the country back home. The horror stories, the prison state picture, the dystopia narrative, all of it was being described as fake. Critics say the modern American left has, in effect, been running a long marketing campaign against its own country. And now that actual visitors are seeing things for themselves, that message is starting to fall apart in real time.
In the paradise you think the rest of the world is, they can't drink beer in public without beating the shit out of each other. And have you seen Europeans reacting to air conditioning? Like it's some exotic experimental technology? Every summer, they're sitting in a 400-year-old stone building, sweating through their Speedo underwear, as opposed to America, where we ask the question, what if my living room didn't cause heat stroke? Here's my favorite foreign visitor testimony from this month.
I feel like I've been lied to my entire life about America.
To Maher, that European dream the modern left keeps talking about seems to exist mostly in vacation photos and online daydreams. Critics argue that real life there can be hotter, tougher, and a lot less comfortable than people imagine, and that many Americans would struggle with it for more than a week. And that is why the conversation does not stay contained to one monologue. People online are treating it like a larger reset, one that forces viewers to ask why certain complaints about America hit so differently depending on who is saying them. For some, the clip sounds like overdue honesty. For others, it comes across as a challenge to the usual script, and that is exactly what keeps the reactions so intense. What makes it stick is that it touches a nerve many commentators have been circling for a while: the gap between public messaging and everyday reality. Once that gap becomes the focus, the debate is no longer just about one comedian, one network, or one political lane. It turns into a broader argument about credibility, perception, and whether these cultural critiques are helping anyone understand the country better. So even as the clip keeps circulating, the bigger point is still the same. Online discussions are not just reacting to what was said, they are reacting to what it seems to reveal about the way people talk past each other now.
This beach is insane, like just as good as Australian beaches. But if you log on to the news, everything's bad, everything's terrible. It's not.
Well, thank you for that perspective, Australian dude who probably just stole somebody's American girlfriend. There actually are some good things about us. Even with all the ICE nonsense, we have more immigrants than the next 4 countries combined. We have to fight for it, but still have freedom of speech and assembly and trial by jury.
Critics framed it as a dishonesty claim to my entire life about America. That was the sentence. And in a lot of online reactions, it became the whole debate. It came from someone who lives outside the country, arrived here, and said the version he had been given felt more like publicity than reality. Critics argued that visitors often notice things more clearly than people who have spent years inside the same political echo chamber. From Maher's perspective, the modern left has spent so much time tearing down the country that some people on that side may have lost sight of what still works here, and now the public keeps getting reminders of that gap. Some commentators even see him as one of the few major liberal voices willing to say the uncomfortable part out loud, and they argue that if his side keeps ignoring that message, it could keep costing them at the ballot box. So, with all of that in mind, like the video, subscribe for more, share it with someone who has been following this debate, comment your take on whether Maher is one of the last honest liberal voices left, and see you on the next one.